Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. The King of God, Asgard signed 100 million years. Chapter 21. After all, Karl Nila was assigned to a squad with them back then. He also served as a comrade in arms for a while. It was only later that Karl Nila became a deserter, and Brynhild never saw her again. So her impression of Karl Nila is just that, she thinks that although she is cold, she is not bad. I didn't expect to hear from the other party again, and she was already Queen Norn. What does Odin decide to do? Ron asked casually. The King of God didn't say anything. It was very strange, as if he wanted to do whatever she wanted. Brynhild said puzzledly. As Valkyrie, her status is now extremely high. So it's hard for her to know a lot of things. Interesting. Ron laughed. Odin may have met Karl Nila privately. But he may not be able to deal with Karl Nila easily. Definitely, this has something to do with his lack of murderous intentions. No matter how strong Karl Nila is, he is no match for the furious Odin. Ron was sure of that. If Odin goes all out, there are not many in the 9 realms who are his all-in-one enemies. Anyway, God King Odin always has his considerations. Except that it distracted Ron a little bit. It's no big deal. Ron kept signing in silently. Not to mention, there are really good things. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 400 years, reward, Kamar Taj spell set. Kamar Taj spellbook. A large number of Kamar Taj's spells are recorded in it, but please choose carefully. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 460 years, reward, System Space Expansion Volume. System Space Expansion Volume. After use, the system space is expanded by 10 grids. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 500 years, and reward, Lasso of Mantra. The Lasso of Truth. One of Wonder Woman Diana's artifacts, it has the property of being unbreakable, and those who are trapped can only speak the truth. These are all good things, not the kind of gadgets. The grid of the system space has reached 60 grids, and more things can be stored. The reason why Kamar Taj's spell needs to be chosen carefully is because of its system. As we all know, Kamar Taj's spells are basically borrowed powers, like that of a great god. For example, both Ancient One and Doctor Strange borrowed their power from the Trinity Visandi. Many of Kamar Taj's spells can't be used without borrowing power from the boss. Definitely, Ron's favorite mirror space does not have this limitation. So he learns quickly. As for the Lasso of Mantra, it is even more precious. What Wonder Woman likes to use most is the Mantra Lasso and the Silver Guardian bracelet. Teacher, let's play a game. A suffocated Brynhild finds Ron. There was a smirk in her eyes, as if she wanted to test Ron's strength. Ron definitely wouldn't turn him down. He hasn't fought for a long time either. Definitely not boring. Asgard at the moment is more developed than the 21st century of later generations. All kinds of technology and entertainment items are available. Ron plays various virtual games in his spare time, which gives him an immersive feeling and a full sense of reality. But since Brynhild wants to fight, let's fight. Follow me. Ron opened the portal casually. Kamar Taj's portal still has its merits. Although the transmission speed is not so fast, it can bring people together. You know, Odin's teleportation spells can only teleport others, but not himself. That's why Bifrost chasing Surta was made. The two stepped through the portal and came directly to a region far away from Asgard. Asgard is only a little smaller than Earth, so its territory is also very vast. And most of the area, except for the Idor plain, is not inhabited by anyone. However, even if the two went to a remote area, they could still see the huge Bifrost when they looked to the side. Even when Bifrost is not turned on, it still has light going straight into the sky from time to time. It can be regarded as a unique scenery in Asgard. Ron clasped his hands together and opened them slowly. A golden light emerged from his hand, and then spread out to the surroundings. In Brynhild's eyes, the world seemed to be turned upside down, and both she and Ron were turned upside down. But there is no such dizzy feeling, which is very strange. After getting along for a long time, she already knew that Ron was a powerful mage. So not too surprised. Come on, boo-boo. Ron chuckled. Brynhild didn't answer, just nodded, then drew out the infinity blade with his right hand, squatted down, and then jumped hard. Boom! Like a gas explosion, Brennhill appeared in front of Ron in an instant. The infinity blade passed through Ron's figure, which turned out to be just an illusion. She felt something approaching behind her, and it made her whole body hot. But just when she was about to turn around, crack, her feet were immediately frozen. And approaching behind her was a fireball bigger than her. Brennhill was shocked all over, using the powerful shock force to break free from the ice spell, and then dodge the big fireball. Ron shook his head. Although Brennhill had improved by a huge amount, he still had to be killed by him. You know, he uses the most basic spells. So, next Ron taught Brennhill a lesson with the most basic spells. Hand of Mage, Energy Whip, Lightning Strike. The spells bombarded him one after another, and the armor on Brennhill seemed to be a little messy. Moreover, the surrounding environment was also shattered by Ron's spell. Whether the spell is strong or not depends on the caster. Ron's current strength, even the lowest level of fireball, still has huge amounts of lethality. So Brennhill knelt decisively. This battle made her understand a word. Your dad will always be your dad, no, your teacher will always be your teacher. Ron waved his hand, and the scars on Brennhill's body disappeared instantly. Then the mirror space was released by him, and Brennhill was surprised to find that the environment that had been damaged just now had returned to its previous state. She vaguely knew what kind of spell it was. The only sound in the room was the sound of Ron turning the pages of the book. Merlin's book of spells was almost destroyed by Ron, but he still read it often. The spell system recorded by Merlin, and those profound laws. He believes that mage's real strength lies in himself, constantly accumulating mana, and practicing by himself, not relying too much on external mana. In this way, even if there is no magic in the outside world one day, he can still cultivate mana constantly, and he is still a powerful mage. This is completely different from the systems of Asgard and Kamar-Taj. But it appealed to Ron. Definitely, the most important thing is those divine arts. The spells recorded in the last few pages of the Book of Magic, such as time regression, time prohibition, etc. The laws of time and space are involved, so such spells must be extremely powerful. The mirror space of Kamar-Taj is a very powerful spell. But obviously, the spells recorded by Merlin are more difficult to practice. Ron can only rely on time to slowly master. Fortunately, in Asgard, the last thing you lack is time. Sign in successfully, sign in for 700 years in a row, and get a reward, Wind King Barrier. Wind King Barrier. One of the treasures used by King Arthur, Artoria Pendragon, is the invisible sword. It is not so much a treasure as a spell. Successful sign in, continuous sign in for 800 years, reward, Superman underwear. Superman bottoms. Bottoms are worn outside, but the tradition of Superman. Why so much Superman stuff? When Ron got it, he felt that the system was joking. Successful sign in, continuous sign in for 900 years. Time flew by, Ron counted the time, finally came to the exciting moment again. Achievements can be achieved again. Definitely, this also means that he has been signed in for 1,000 years. Such a long time was unimaginable to the previous Ron. Sign in. When the light came up, Ron immediately chose to sign in. Successful sign in, continuous sign in for 1,000 years, congratulations for achieving the first Millennium Super Magic Lottery achievement, and get a reward, Superman template. Superman template. Kryptonian Clark Kent's template. After integrate, you will get Kryptonian ability. Millennium, Super God Lottery, plus the first achievement. So got this reward. Ron's heart seemed to stop when he saw it. No wonder the system has been giving him Superman things, first the cloak, then the glasses, and the outerwear, and now he has a template. Superman templates. Are the people of Asgard powerful? But in front of the Kryptonians, that is also scum. Asgardians get older and stronger, so don't Kryptonians do the same? And it gets stronger in the sun. So, Ron immediately chose integrate. No pain or anything like Ron imagined, just relief. The sun is shining on him, and the energy is all inside him, making him like a central air conditioner. So, in the following time, Ron had one more thing to do. That is basking in the sun. He only has one feeling now, that Superman is worthy of being the son of DC, and he feels that his constitution is rapidly becoming stronger. Only the next day, he could fly directly with the constitution. It's not so much flight as it is that he jumps too high and can stay in the air all the time. What makes Ron happiest is that this is Marvel, and there is no kryptonite that can restrain the Kryptonians. Therefore, Ron is now equivalent to a double cultivation of magic and martial arts. Practice magic in the sun. This is the state of his life. Definitely, it didn't take long for a small thing to happen. Heimdall's sister, Sif, who was later identified as Thor's official wife, was born. In Asgard, people are not equal. Some people are born gods of war, such as Sif. Especially she is also blessed by Odin. The power of Odin allowed her to grow beyond most Asgardians. But for more than 10 years, when she grows up, Sif's strength can already rival the General Valkyrie. And because the Valkyrie army was not completely wiped out, Sif trained with Valkyrie since he was a child. The strength is much stronger than it should be. This is the second generation of gods. She basically gets the same treatment as Wonder Woman Diana. Someone teaches, someone prepares weapons. So before he was an adult, he followed the Valkyrie Legion to quell the rebellion in the 9 realms. As Odin stopped moving, those oppressed races began to resist on a small scale. This is a test, to see how long Odin can endure. If Odin hadn't said it all along, they'd definitely do more. Odin naturally understood this too. But he has made up his mind to be a benevolent king. But no matter how you look at it, there is no real peace in the 9 realms. Whether it is by Odin's means or Hela's means, it is impossible for the 9 realms to be free from war. Speaking of Hela, she is also very miserable. Under Odin's operation, the new generation doesn't even know who Hela is. The people of Asgard dare not even mention this name, as if they want to make her disappear completely. Therefore, Thor was surprised to find out later. He even has a sister. With the birth of Sif, the birth of Thor is not far away. For the people of Asgard, Thor, who is more than 1,000 years old, is a young man in the eyes of Odin, so it is normal for 1,000 years to give birth to a trumpet. Now Odin's only hope is that the trumpet won't be scrapped like the tuba. In the case of absorbing enough sunlight every day, Ron's strength improved by leaps and bounds. It's like riding a rocket. And from time to time there will be some problems. Like now, Ron is basking in the sun again. The sun is so bright today, hurry up and go back to drink after work. Are you going to drink tonight, or to flirt with girls? Quote. Countless voices appeared in his mind, which troubled him very much. It's not what other people are talking about, it's what's in their hearts. This is one of the abilities of Kryptonians. Mind reading. Also known as super hearing. Even for Ron, the only way to get used to this ability is to turn it off. No wonder Superman doesn't like to use this ability, as if his head was blown off. In the back, the sound of the whole city is in the head, and only Superman's brain can bear it. In addition to super hearing, with the absorption of more and more solar energy, the abilities of Kryptonians have also been developed one by one. For example, the thermal vision of the eyes is the ability to emit fiery red beams. In addition to melting various things, it can also complete the ability to weld and heal wounds. Definitely, when Ron has more and more solar energy in his body, sooner or later the thermal vision will surpass the core of the sun. There is also super breathing, which can freeze opponents, create hurricanes, change the weather, and become stronger and stronger, and even blow out fixed star. In addition, there are things like super strength and super speed. All kinds of abilities make Ron feel pain and happiness. Being stronger and stronger is naturally happy, but it is also painful. For example, when developing thermal vision, he always felt like there were flames in his eyes, and his eyes were often dry and painful. And the super breath made him only able to hold his breath for a long time, otherwise he might blow out a frosty breath as soon as he opened his mouth. Fortunately, Ron is powerful, and it didn't take much time to master these abilities. I don't know how little Clark got here. No wonder he was very autistic and was regarded as a monster. What Ron can be sure of is that the Superman template he integrated should not be the castrated version. Man of Steel, just the initial level. Given his time, it's totally comparable to Superman's most powerful period. Definitely, it takes time. After he almost perfectly mastered the various abilities brought by the Superman template, Brenhill brought a girl to the door. Actually not even a girl. Although Asgard people have a long lifespan, their growth period is similar to that of common humans. Sif had long since grown into what Ron remembered. She is about the same height as Brunhild and wears Valkyrie armor. Because the Valkyrie Legion still exists, Sif chose to join Valkyrie. After all, this is a great honor for all Asgardians. Teacher, she is Sif. Brunhild introduced to Ron. Sif stared at Ron curiously with wide eyes. In comparison, Sif's age is like a child in front of him. Hello, Sif. Ron smiled. Sif also gave him a big hug. You are Valkyrie's teacher. I heard you are very strong. Sif. Brunhild scolded, and then said to Ron, Teacher, Sif is just like this. It doesn't matter. Ron laughed, patting Sif on the back. Ahem. Sif immediately coughed loudly, and she felt that Ron's slap just now almost hit her on the ground. It took a while to slow down, and then looked at Ron in horror. She didn't expect that there were such huge amounts of energy in Ron's body. Can commons Aesir Protoss do it? Although the strength of the Asgard people is strong, it has not reached the level of abnormality. The items that can be lifted are usually tens of tons. But Superman is different. Even in his weakest period, he can push the ocean liner. When it is strong, it is easy to drag the earth. Teacher. Brunhild also found anomalies. Ron seemed to be strong again. This dealt a very big blow to Brunhild. After finally becoming the strongest Valkyrie, it turns out that the gap with Ron is getting bigger and bigger. Although she didn't want to surpass Ron, she didn't want to have a big gap. That would make her feel far away from Ron. Boog, what's the matter? Ron didn't want to say much about it. Definitely, the most important thing is that I don't want the two of them to disturb me basking in the sun. It's like this, Sif wants to become stronger, I think you can teach her well. Brunhild puts a lot of emphasis on the word teaching. Apparently, Sif has been pestering her, making her a little angry. Definitely can. Ron is also a little interested in Sif. Now that a Valkyrie has been bred, there's nothing wrong with bred another goddess of war. However, you must agree to my request. Seeing that Sif was a little happy, Ron said immediately. Any request? Don't tell anyone anything about me. Why? Sif asked puzzled. Because I'm low-key. Quote. Brunhild left Sif here and left quickly. It seems that Sif was a mischievous child when he was a child. But it's normal, otherwise, how could he play with Thor, a fool? Apparently, Sif inherited the fierceness and combativeness of the people of Asgard. Teacher, can I call you that? Sif asked as cutely as possible. But her appearance is really not cute, and her lines are a bit sharp, but this is what makes her look heroic after wearing armor. Then what shall we learn first? Sif became excited. First step, help me make wine first. Ron said to Sif. What? Hurry up, or I won't teach you. Sif had no choice but to make wine honestly. People in Asgard like to drink, but there are not many winemakers. Moreover, it is all industrialized now, and there are not many people here. Usually nobody bothered Ron. When it comes to brewing wine, in fact, you only need to look at those machines. Then, watch Ron put strange condiments in it from time to time. I heard that the teacher has quit drinking for many years. Sif looked at Ron's back strangely. She couldn't imagine how she could live without drinking. Has been busy until the sun disappeared. Ron left with Sif. During the day, she followed Ron in the sun for a day. Teacher, why do you want to bask in the sun? Sif asks if he doesn't understand. Because the sun is getting stronger. Quote. Facing Ron's answer, Sif couldn't believe it. In the following time, Ron specifically looked for a good place. Perfect for basking in the sun and also teaching Sif. The same method as teaching Brunhild, that is, hit hard. Sif is worthy of being Odin's favorite daughter-in-law, so her weapons are long swords granted by Odin, which can be used as common weapons to attack and defend, and can also use special swings to open space channels and teleport her to her destination. Therefore, Sif's fighting skills and swordsmanship are very extraordinary. This is why no one can teach her. Her originally ability is good, and she becomes very strong in a short period of time. So, it was thrown to Ron by Brunhild. At first, Sif thought Ron had some special hobbies. Because she was beaten badly, even with the constitution of the Asgard people, she was beaten black and blue. Fortunately, she soon felt that she was getting stronger. Ron noticed that she was very fast, and obviously speed was to her advantage. In contrast, her stamina is the worst. Definitely, but compared to her own, endurance is not as good as other abilities. It was precisely because he noticed the change in himself that Sif endured it. So that every time I go back very late, my parents will ask me what I did. In addition to constitution, Sif's swordsmanship is getting stronger and stronger. Only, Ron told her not to use the sword Odin gave her. Because there is magic left by Odin on it, no one knows whether Odin will find Ron through it. So, he casually took out a sword from the system space and threw it to Sif. Thunderfury, blessed sword of the Windseeker, from the Molten Core, is a very legendary weapon. This is the Wind Sword in Legendary, and the largest one-handed sword in World of Warcraft. There are faint thunder and lightning surrounding it, so Sif can't put it down after seeing it. Is this for me? Sif asked expectantly. No, this is on loan to you. Ron wouldn't dare let Odin see it. Brunhild told Ron earlier that Odin asked her how she got the Infinity Blade. Now the Wind Sword is more attractive than the Infinity Blade, and there is an obvious magical aura on it. If Odin knows, he will definitely want to track it down. After all, whether it is the material of the Infinity Blade or the Wind Sword, Asgard does not have it. Brunhild only said that he had an adventure. Odin trusted her, so he didn't ask further. If Sif uses more wind swords out of thin air, it will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Sif pouted unhappy. So for a long time, Sif put on an expression that he didn't want to talk to him. Ron naturally ignored her. Sif is just putting on a show. Time passed in such a dull and common day. Except for the extra Sif beside him, life was no different for Ron. Drink. Sif held the wind sword and slashed at Ron fiercely. Then Ron grabbed the blade directly with his hand. Clang. The sound was like hitting steel. Sif was not surprised, she was used to it. Then, the wind sword triggered its effect, and a bolt of lightning hit Ron directly. Still unscathed, Ron kicked Sif far away with one kick, and it also had magic, which made Sif feel hot in the area where he was kicked. Sif was already used to it. She got up directly from the ground, and then continued to attack Ron. She uses skill more than brute force. Because she is obviously not as strong as Ron. The result was the same, it was still directly hit by Ron. This is the daily training of Sif. Do not fight. Sif dropped the wind sword and sat on the ground panting. How many times have I said that you must never drop your weapon unless you are dead? Ron yelled sternly, and Sif picked up the wind sword. Ron was a total tyrant when it came to teaching her. Sif thought in his heart, but dared not resist at all. Ron, the teacher, had left a deep impression on her heart. Not to mention shadows. No wonder Brunhild can become Valkyrie, and so can she if she is trained like this. Teacher, are you an Aesir Protoss? Constitution is too perverted. Sif said with a bitter face. Given that she was a little girl, Ron didn't care about her words. Otherwise, who am I? Then why are you so strong? I feel like I'm about to be kicked to death by you. Because I have extraordinary abilities. Ron said casually. Sif pouted, obviously dissatisfied with the answer. She had already noticed that Ron was completely different from the Asgardians. The Constitution alone crushed the people of Asgard countless times. In comparison, Ron is the real Protoss. The most important thing is that Ron's Constitution is getting stronger every day. There seems to be no limit. Just like just now, she slashed at Ron with the wind sword, but didn't even leave a mark. Even the lightning strike triggered by the wind sword did not harm Ron. Not even hair messed up. Therefore, Sif can only call pervert directly. It's so boring, why is there no war to fight? Sif thought longingly. She also imagined Brunhild to be a blockbuster. Why fight? Because you gain prestige by fighting. Ron shook his head. Even after hundreds of years, Sif still looks like a child. Yes, Ron taught her longer than Brunhild. After all, it was in the Nine Realms War at that time, and Brunhild quickly got his chance. And now, with only a small-scale rebellion, Sif has little chance of making a splash. Anyway, everyone knows that she is very strong. Teacher, do you have any carrots? Ron's face darkened. Some time ago he checked in and got a carrot, which was eaten by Sif. Now she's addicted. Definitely, not how good it tastes, but how effective it is. Carrot. This is not a common carrot. There was a killer back then. Just eat it and you can gain infinite power. Obviously, this is another metaphysical thing, from the famous carrot killer. But after taking Sif, I don't feel tired immediately, which proves that it is still effective. Sign in successfully, sign in for 1,600 consecutive years, and get the reward, Frostmourne. Frostmourne. Infused with the power of Ner'zhul the Lich King, it is a cursed sword. Frostmourne. Another sword. Ron didn't even know how many swords he had. Fortunately, there are many people with swords around. Teacher, something is wrong. Sif's people didn't arrive, but the voice came over, looking very anxious. Ron had a headache and said, Sif, how many times have I told you, don't make such a fuss. The Sif in front of him is completely different from the serious, cold and quiet image in his impression. Considering she's still a child, hundreds of years old, Ron can't help it. It can only be said that the hundreds of years of the Asgard people is equivalent to the 10 years of the Earth people. Oh, Sif said something in a low voice, and the whole person fell silent. Sif like this looks very cold. After all, that's what she looks like. What happened? Ron asked now. Asgard has a great prince. Born to God King Odin and Queen Frigg. What's the matter? Ron already had a rough idea of what it was. Thor was born. The God King named him Thor Odinson. Everyone says Ragnarok is coming. Sif watched Ron nervously, as if Ragnarok had really arrived. Knowing the future, Ron doesn't panic at all. As far as Ragnarok is in his memory, that will have to wait more than 1,000 years later. Therefore, this prediction is definitely not reliable. Not so long ago, Asgard secretly circulated prophecy. Or rather, it existed a long time ago. That is, once Thor is born, Ragnarok will come. At that time, someone mysteriously told Ron, and then Ron kicked him away. Because there are many such rumors. For example, Thor will be the mortal enemy of the big snake, only he can kill the big snake, but he will also die at the hands of the big snake. There are also some prophecies about Odin. Definitely, the most important thing is not whether the prophecy exists or not, but that the people of Asgard believe it. Like Odin was always on guard against Ragnarok. If he does not believe in prophecy, how can he prevent it? He wanted to collect the Infinity Gauntlet in large part to deal with Ragnarok. However, Odin still named the newborn child Thor, because this is the child of prophecy. Therefore, it caused panic in Asgard. It wasn't a big deal, because it turned out that Asgard had always existed. But, just when Ron thought it wasn't a problem, Ragnarok is coming. Boom. On this day, the entire 9 realms turned into a fiery red sky, and then blood. Countless people looked up at the sky, not knowing what happened. Only those who believed in the prophecy began to pray. Then, a figure of huge amounts of appeared, as if covering the entire 9 realms. That's the flame titan Surta. This guy who has been imprisoned in the Earth's core for more than 1,000 years has come out again. Unfortunately, the protagonist of Ragnarok in the prophecy is the guy who just escaped from birth. So, huge amounts of panic gripped Asgard. Brunhild and Sif went straight to Ron, hoping he would make a move by then. Even Valkyrie and the goddess of war have believed this prophecy. But Ron wasn't panicking at all. He just nodded and said, if I need to take action, I will. If he really got to that point, he would definitely not see Asgard destroyed. Ron took out the true knowledge spar directly. Under his mana infusion, the picture quickly appeared. Neither Brunhild nor Sif left, but looked at the magical item in front of them. The huge body of Flame Titan Surta appeared in the picture, but in front of Surta's eyes were a group of gods. Olympus Pantheon. The instant he saw it, Ron understood. Because the person in the lead struck Surta with a lightning bolt, but was easily knocked away by Surta. Zeus. Then, Ares, the god of war, rushed forward. The god of war Ares, who is comparable to Thor in the comics, was directly torn by Surta. Ares, an extremely beautiful goddess, cried miserably. Sure enough, Ares still couldn't escape the fate of being torn apart. In the comics, he gets ripped off by Sentry. And then, Ragnarok from Legendary. It's just that the gods refer to the Olympus Pantheon, and it's not clear whether they will spread to Asgard. Odin thief, do you think that Asgard can still exist after I die? Zeus and others kept calling Odin's name, wanting Odin to save them. But obviously thinking too much. Odin wished they were all dead. At the moment Bifrost has been shut down, there will be no rescue. This benevolent god king revealed his cruel side for the last time. Obviously, he doesn't want too many gods to exist in the 9 realms. Odin will not save you, and Asgard will surely be destroyed by me. As the protagonist in Ragnarok, Surta shouted arrogantly. Then, directly destroy Olympus completely. Zeus and others were mercilessly beheaded by Surta. Ron looked at Surta in the picture, and felt that he was almost the same as he was more than 1,000 years ago, at most he had only become stronger. But actually slaughtered the Olympus gods. Where is my Lord Kui? Ron didn't think it was that simple. Zeus and others can exist for so long, obviously they are not weak chickens. Surta is not at home, can kill them. The Olympus god system is gone. Brunhild looked at the scene before him in disbelief. The reason why Asgard does not wage war against Midgard is not only because of Asgard's territory, but also because of the Olympus pantheon. But now, these Shendu are dead. There is no time to make them sad, because the next moment, Bifrost will be opened. As if to greet Surta on purpose, the Flame Titan followed Bifrost directly to Asgard. This is more and more like the prophesied Ragnarok. According to prophecy, the main process of Ragnarok. It was the Flame Titan Surta who came to Asgard through Bifrost and opened Ragnarok. Now, the prophecy is coming true step by step. Heimdall. Sif shouted in disbelief. She didn't understand why her big brother turned on Bifrost. Haven't you seen that the Olympus gods have perished? Heimdall could have seen it all. He did it on purpose. Ron had turned off the spar of knowledge, which took a toll on him. Although they are all within the 9 realms, the true knowledge spar originally does not have the ability to see from such a distance. Mainly Ron supported it with his own magic power. Why? Sif is completely upset and has no ability to think. So Ron didn't say much. Don't worry, Asgard will be fine. Ron said, looking at Brunhild, it's time for you to go back to the Valkyrie Corps. I'm leaving. Brunhild also came back to his senses, but the shock on his face was still there. If it wasn't for Ron, she wouldn't know what happened to Earth. It can be said that the vast majority of people don't know what happened. They could only see the Bifrost opened, and Surta came to Asgard through the Bifrost. Brunhild summoned his Pegasus and hurried back. By this time, Surta had arrived in Asgard. Roar. Odin didn't expect that. Surta vented his hatred and frantically destroyed everything in Asgard. Bearing the brunt of this is Bifrost. In Surta's hand is a sword of huge amounts of flame. This is Surta's Excalibur, the Twilight Sword. Forged in the burning heart of the galaxy, it carries the eternal fire, a catalyst for magic that can cut through nearly all barriers of matter and magic, and even cut through other dimensions. Surta swung it for Ragnarok. At the moment, Surta cuts Bifrost straight with a Twilight Sword. Bifrost turned into countless fragments in an instant. Odin appeared for the first time, and his heart bleeds when he saw this scene. The construction of Bifrost consumes a lot, and now it has to be rebuilt again. Surta, it's time to end. Odin regained his composure, and he said flatly while wearing the destroyer armor. Afterwards, the God King, who had been aged for more than 1,000 years, showed his at the moment strength. The Spear of Eternity was thrown by him, and his body became as big as Surta. Looks like a mass destroyer. Jump. Surta was directly knocked down. He finds that Odin's power has grown stronger again, stronger than it was more than 1,000 years ago. With each passing day, the power of Odin within Odin grows stronger. Now facing Odin, he has no power to resist. He thought that bringing the Twilight Sword would destroy Asgard, but it turned out to be difficult for him to accept. At this time, no matter how stupid Surta is, he knows he has been fooled. He said how the seal disappeared, and why the worldly python disappeared. It turned out that it was all Odin's scheme. Shut up. Odin growled and slammed his fists on Surta's head. The Flame Titan fell directly on the surface of the sea, instantly evaporating the sea area. However, the crown on his head was also directly taken off by Odin. This time Odin shot with all his strength, without even giving Surta a chance to escape. Obviously, Odin has been preparing for this moment for a long time. Roar! Surta cried out in pain, and the strength in his body quickly drained. Originally not fighting in his own homeland, at the moment didn't even have the crown of increasing power. Odin stood tall, grabbed Surta with both hands and began to cast magic. In the name of the God King, I deprive you of the eternal fire. Odin said that he wanted to spin off Surta's the eternal fire as well. The eternal fire is equivalent to Surta's energy source, the core of life. Losing the eternal fire and the crown, Surta naturally has the only way to disappear. But Surta is not dead. Because the eternal fire is eternal. As long as the two get together, Surta can be resurrected again. All I saw were incomparably huge amounts of continuously burning flames floating out from Surta's body and the Twilight Sword. Then the two flames gradually merged. Odin wanted to make both shrink, but instead started to swell. Die to me, Odin. Surta's flaming face spat out the last words, and then his whole body, which was over 1,000 meters high, exploded like a nuclear bomb. Boom! The whole world seemed to be eclipsed for a moment. A huge amounts of mushroom cloud appears at the location of the previous Bifrost. Then endless flames spread in the direction of Asgard. It's like swallowing the whole of Asgard. Ragnarok is coming. I don't know who yelled first, and all Asgard people fell into panic. There are even many people who want to escape immediately. But the explosion spread very quickly, and it was already approaching in just an instant. Teacher, Sif's terrified voice rang in Ron's ears. Because the explosion made the sound of the whole world seem to have become quieter, she had to scream. Ron didn't do it directly, but looked for Odin in the explosion. Will Odin sit back and watch Asgard fall? Soon, he saw the figure of Odin. The destroyer armor was unscathed by the explosion, but Odin did not move. Ron stared, knowing that Odin was trying to force him out. But Odin also thought too simply. A smile formed on the corner of Ron's mouth. Then spread your 5 fingers in front of you. Time stops. The whole of Asgard seemed to be hit by a time stop button. The running crowd stopped in place, and Sif, who was about to speak, opened his mouth wide and his eyes froze. The fire dragon brought by the explosion also stopped, and it was only a little bit close to the crowd. Odin is not out of time like Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension. So I was also trapped for the first time. However, with his formidable strength, he seemed to be breaking free. Ron wasted no time and just pushed forward with both hands. Boom! The fire dragon that stopped in place suddenly backed up and was pushed back by Ron. Then, Odin, who was standing still, was hit by the explosion again. Boom! 2 consecutive explosions around him. Odin suffered a lot of internal injuries even though he was wearing the destroyer armor. In the next second, the world recovered. Ron looked at Sif beside him, and showed a concerned expression at the right time. Seeing that the explosion has gone, although people don't know what happened. But still happy. Ragnarok failed. We survived. I knew that the God King would protect us. What kind of flame titan is God King Odin afraid of? You weren't the most panicked before, you kept saying that Thor was a disaster. Hush. Listening to the discussion in his ears, Sif finally smiled. Teacher, we are fine. Yes. Ron patted her on the head. Don't hit me on the head. Sif was annoyed. All Black's hair was messed up by Ron. It is rumored that Sif, the goddess of war, was originally blonde. But the reality has always been a head of black hair. Odin returned to Asgard annoyed after suffering, but pretended to be nonchalant. Lowering his visor, his voice echoed throughout Asgard. Never worry about prophecies. Asgard must always exist. But he knew in his heart that the prophesied time for Ragnarok had never come. Odin then sealed Surta into the crown, and a cloud of the eternal fire floated in his hand. The current eternal fire is only as big as a brazier. The detonation of Surta just now made it lose most of its power. As a result, Odin's treasury has 2 more collections. As for what happened before, Odin tried to figure it out, but couldn't figure it out. When time stopped, the thoughts in his mind became extremely dull. If it weren't for his strong strength, the power of Odin in his body would instantly dispel the spell, and he would not be able to notice that time was stopped at all. What a terrifying strength. Odin sighed, but fortunately, the other party didn't seem to have any malice towards Asgard. As Surta entered Asgard, countless chain reactions occurred after this. The first is Bifrost loss. Rebuilding Bifrost is not only costly, but also time-consuming. The most important thing is that with the disappearance of Bifrost, Asgard cannot immediately support other realms. Thus, a rebellion broke out in the 9 realms. Mr. Muspelheim, the Land of Fire, immediately began to attack the base left by Asgard after knowing that their king Surta was sealed by Odin. Although the Asgard warriors tried their best to stop them, they still fell into a bitter battle. Then, several other circles also got the news. After all, Asgard, as the substantial ruler of the 9 realms at the moment, it is impossible not to know about such a big event. After getting the exact news, Frost Titan also began to rebel on a small scale. Frost Titan King Lof's restless mind became active again. Lof was not a quiet master. Even if Asgard didn't conquer him, when the Frost Titan is strong, he might have to do something. Not to mention the new and old grudges are counted together now. So he tacitly allowed his men to start rebelling. There are also several other circles, and there are also minor rebellions. Only the Spirit of Light remained unchanged. They love nature and love peace, and the 9 realms war has nothing to do with them. Therefore, without Bifrost's Asgard, the only way to transport troops to all walks of life to suppress the rebellion is through warships. Fortunately, the Valkyrie army is still there, and they will go out immediately. Sif finally has the battlefield she craves. Her powerful strength finally began to show. Coupled with the sword given to her by Odin, her record is very dazzling, comparable to the Valkyrie of Brunhild. However, this counterinsurgency is not easy. Fortunately, Muspelheim said, without the support of Surta, the rebellion was suppressed in one fell swoop. Moreover, the Asgard warriors went on a killing spree, causing heavy losses to the Flame Titans. If you want to rebel next, I am afraid that you will have a psychological shadow. But Jotunheim, it is not so easy to suppress the rebellion. If Odin doesn't show up for the fight, Frost Titan won't give up so easily. Especially when it was discovered that Odin could not come out, the Frost Titan King Lof directly launched a full-scale rebellion. The previously established Asgard outposts have been damaged a lot. The support of the Valkyrie Legion can only support it. Definitely, did not fall immediately. The two sides once again fell into a long stalemate. After all, it was in the territory of Frost Titan, so Asgard's army was beaten and kept retreating. Without Hela, the goddess of death, they found war less easy. In the past, when Odin was away, Hela, the goddess of death, took the lead in the charge. And Lof's strength cannot suppress the goddess of death. Now, they can't expect a child Thor to lead the charge, can they? Therefore, it can only survive with the help of the Valkyrie army. It looks like it's only a matter of time before the Frost Titan regains ground. This battle is likely to continue for a long time. Ron's life hasn't changed much. Although Asgard wanted to recruit troops, it didn't let him participate. So he still basks in the sun every day, and every now and then Brunhild and Sif will come back to see him. After all, wars are not fought every day. Even a Frost Titan needs a rest. Otherwise, a war cannot last for so long. Teacher, I have already won the title of Goddess of War. Sif said as if asking for credit. This is what you deserve. Ron said flatly. May I bring Thor to you? Asked Sif. Ron remembered that fool, so he immediately said, no. Why? Because he is too stupid to hide anything. Sif remembered to play less with him. But the God King asked me to get in touch with him more. Sif said with a vague understanding. In fact, she is not young, but she only knows how to fight all day long, so she seems a little innocent. At the moment, after Ron said, Sif suddenly realized Odin's idea. Odin wouldn't want her to be that brat's wife, would he? Although there is not much age difference between them, Sif thinks he is mature enough. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 1,700 years, and reward, the technique of multiple shadow duplication. Multiple shadow duplication technique. A forbidden technique in Naruto, you can use chakra to increase the number of shadow duplications. Sign in successfully, sign in for 1,800 years in a row, and get a reward, Guardian Silver Bracelet. Guardian Silver Bracelet. Wonder Woman Diana's most commonly used equipment. This bracelet has the power of Guardian Spirit. It is made by Hephaestus, the god of fire. The raw material is the fragment of Aegis, the Aegis of Zeus, the king of god of Olympus. It can automatically attract firepower, Protect the wearer from being approached by flying arrows and stray bullets. Indestructible. Successful sign-in. Continuous sign-in for 1,900 years. Reward. System space expansion volume large. System space expansion volume large. After use, the system space can be expanded by 100 grids. Successful sign-in. Continuous sign-in for 2,000 years. This sign-in is a super magic lottery. No first-time achievement bonus, and reward. Fountain of Youth Strengthening Version. Fountain of Youth Strengthening Version, originally from the world of Pirates of the Caribbean. After being strengthened by the system, giving anyone a drop can prolong life for 1,000 years, without restrictions on use. Unconsciously, time passed quietly again. The second war between Asgard and Jotunheim has reached its peak. I have to say that Frost Titan is indeed the mortal enemy of the gods. But it has nothing to do with Ron, he gets stronger with time. Duplication doesn't do much for him. Because he doesn't have chakra, even if magic can be used, he has already mastered the shape of Cthulhu. Even the duplication method used by Doctor Strange later. Other than that, everything else is good stuff. As the most important means of protection for Wonder Woman, the Guardian Silver Bracelet has almost no attacks that it cannot resist. It's just that the style is a bit feminine, and Ron can only put it away. He couldn't imagine wearing a silver Guardian bracelet on his hand. It would be even better to expand the volume of the system space, and it is still a one-time increase of 100 grids. This time Ron's draw has filled the entire space. In the end, a lot of things were stored away. Now there are enough grids to fit them all in. As for the Fountain of Youth, Ron took a look, and a tattered bottle appeared in his hand, with only a slightly intact cork on it. It seemed that as long as he tried hard, he would crush the bottle. This bottle is not small. No matter how you look at it, there are hundreds of drops of the Fountain of Youth. One drop is 1,000 years of life. And it can still be used by anyone. It is indeed a super magic lottery. But this thing was of no use to Ron either. Since he drew the Superman template, he no longer needs to worry about longevity. Superman's lifespan is the same as that of heaven and earth. Although he will age, but as the sun's energy is absorbed, the aging will become slower and slower. So that amounts to no change. It can be saved for later use by others. At least Ron wouldn't want to see Brunhild and others die of old age in front of him. Asgardians have long lives, but that doesn't guarantee them immortality. Bifrost was repaired more than a decade after it was broken. But in Jotunheim, Asgard has lost its head start. So it has been dragged on until now. Especially Lof is stronger than before. But Odin has not appeared, and the Asgard warriors can only retreat steadily. Later, even Thor, who had just grown up, joined the battle. But his strength is not enough, he can only follow behind Valkyrie. It can be regarded as the end of his childhood dream of joining the Valkyrie army. Not long ago, the warriors of Asgard were completely driven out by the Frost Titan. Moreover, Lof, the Frost Titan king, went further and thought that Odin was completely old. Or maybe his ambitions had inflated. After driving away the Asgardians, they still wanted to continue fighting. But Lof didn't dare to spread the flames of war to Asgard, because he knew that if he fought in Asgard itself, the Frost Titan would definitely be miserable. So, he aimed at a place. The center of the 9 realms, Midgard, is Earth. Lof wants to take over Earth first. At the moment the Olympus Pantheon has been destroyed, and the worldly Python has disappeared. And the civilization on the Earth originally is still very backward, and the time of at the moment is only more than 900 AD on the Earth. Therefore, Lof started to occupy the mind of the Earth. Lof wants to put the Earth into an ice age, so that the Earth will become a second home for the Frost Titans. Faced with this situation, Odin couldn't sit still. This benevolent god king who didn't know what he was thinking finally decided to take action to resolve the battle. Boom! Bifrost opens and Odin descends to Earth with the Valkyrie Legion and others. Because the location was in Tønsberg, Norway, this battle was known as the Battle of Norway in history. To Ron's surprise, Odin also seemed to swell. He didn't wear the destroyer armor, maybe because he thought Olaf didn't need to go to war. Then, Lof surprised him. Lof didn't hold back this time, and directly activated Casket of Ancient Winters. Norway has a cold climate and is close to the Arctic Circle. At the moment is affected by the casket of ancient winters, and the temperature is extremely low. At the moment Norway was in the Viking period, and the Vikings saw Odin's shot. It was Odin who first threw the spear of eternity. As a result, the Vikings had a tradition of throwing spears by the leader at the beginning of the battle. In other distant areas, only a flash of lightning can be seen, so it is regarded as a meteor. Boom! The eternal spear hits the casket of ancient winters as before. But it has been opened at the moment, and it has been unable to stop the spread of ice chi. Odin, it's time to forget the old and new hatreds together, cried Lof's ugly face. Titans don't look very good, especially the Frost Titan, which makes Ron simply unacceptable. Feeling the air of ice around him, Odin's strength seemed to be affected. Although he still has the upper hand, Frost Titan is getting stronger and stronger. Norway is the battleground chosen by the Frost Titans. While not as icy and mild as Jotunheim, it doesn't detract from them much. As long as it's not in that hot area, the Frost Titan's strength won't be damaged. Definitely, Asgard soldiers have to bear the cold. As the treasure of Frost Titan, Casket of Ancient Winters naturally has its effect. Although it failed to freeze Odin as expected, it also affected Odin. It's just that the inflated Lof overestimated himself and underestimated Odin. Even though Odin didn't hit him as hard as he did with Surta, he still beat him pretty badly. Frost Titan is even more one-sided when facing Asgard warrior. Although there is no Hela, there is another Thor. The hammer that Hela didn't like fell into Thor's hand and officially became Mjolnir. Although Thor is a fool, he is indeed brave in battle. Coupled with the presence of the Valkyrie Legion, the Frost Titans are literally being slaughtered. Lof again couldn't accept this ending. He thought he was strong enough, but he was still beaten by Odin. Definitely, the stupidest thing is that he gave up Jotunheim's home advantage. No matter how cold the temperature is in Norway, it is impossible to be lower than Jotunheim. Lof, who seemed to know the ending, could only fight desperately for the final blow. Boom! Odin's spear of eternity pierced Lof directly. Lof endured the pain and forcibly exchanged injuries for injuries to shoot Odin. The space seemed to be frozen, and there was a click sound. However, an avalanche occurred directly on the snow-capped mountains in the distance, as if the two sides were completely two worlds. Snow and ice directly covered Odin and Lof. Then, when everyone saw Odin again, one of Odin's eyes disappeared. The familiar Odin appeared. Odin roared angrily, as if he was going to eat Lof alive, and gave Lof a painful blow. But for some reason, he still didn't kill Lof. Ron had no idea what Odin was thinking. Maybe it's the long-term stability, which has made Odin used to it, and he doesn't want to start a war lightly, he just wants peace. The Frost Titans were naturally defeated, and the Odin just took their casket of ancient winters. In the eyes of many people, Odin at the moment is not like a god king, but like a collector. He just collects treasures and puts them in his treasury, and does nothing else. With the appearance of Bifrost, everyone returned to Asgard. Only the Vikings witnessed it all, and thus the legendary of the gods of the West. Definitely, also because of the existence of Odin and others, the churches in Norway have begun to believe in Odin. The 9 realms have once again returned to peace. For Ron, he's seen too many fights over the years. And it's basically pointless. Odin conquered the 9 realms for his own ambition, and then gave up his ambition because of the soul gem. But the 9 realms have already started a dispute, and it is impossible to end it easily. So, Odin is not the culprit. After returning to Asgard, Asgard was actually not peaceful. Odin suddenly had another child, whom he named Loki. God of deceit, Loki. Definitely, the main reason is that Odin lost an eye. The originally majestic god king has now become a one-eyed dragon. Many Asgard people can't accept it. If it weren't for Odin's previous prestige, I am afraid that many people would condemn him. But even if there is no condemnation, there are still many voices below. In this case, Odin seems to have taken a hit. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 2,100 years. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 2,200 years, and reward, Sea God Trident. Sea God Trident, the exclusive weapon of Poseidon in Legendary. With it, you have the power to control the sea. After getting it, Ron tried the Poseidon Trident not only has the power to control the sea, but also can talk to the creatures on the seabed. As long as you take it, you will become the god of the sea. Coupled with the water ring Nanya that Ron got before, there are almost no water elements that he can't control. Teacher, the God King seems to want to pass the throne to Thor. Brynhild said to Ron. Normal, Odin is old. Ron really felt that Odin was getting old. Though he doesn't see Odin much. But the Golden Hall often held banquets, and Odin would always appear. Ron could feel that Odin was getting worse. Perhaps from the moment his ambition disappeared, he had died a little. But Thor is not a good heir. Ron laughed. You think so too? Brynhild said. Sif also thought he was stupid. Quote. Ron found that something seemed to have changed in himself. The original Sif should have admired Thor very much, because Thor can fight very well. But now, Sif only thinks that Thor is a tough guy. Because hundreds of years have passed, Thor has exposed his naive nature. In this case, Odin can't make Sif fall in love with Thor. So there are only 3 of the 4 warriors behind Thor. He does have a bit, mainly because his character is not suitable for synthesis as a king, and Odin will not raise a good king. Ron shook his head and said, even though Thor has gone through so many things later, he is still not a good king. He doesn't have the temperament of a king at all, nor does he have a strong mentality. Unlike Odin, although he suffered many blows, he stood firm and did not give up on himself. From this point of view, Hela seems to be more suitable for synthesis as a king, as long as her character is not so belligerent. Brynhild recalled. She knew what was being said here, Odin couldn't hear. Whoever it is will only lead Asgard to its demise. Ron said disdainfully. Loki doesn't need to look at it. Odin knew he was the Frost Titan and could never give Loki the throne. Odin didn't have a pure heart in adopting him in the first place. Just for Loki to grow up and take control of the Frost Titan. Brynhild sneered, but didn't say much. If Asgard perishes, her Valkyrie is the worst. She could only hope that what Ron had said didn't happen. Teacher, do you want to go out? On this day, Sif asked Ron, who was leisurely basking in the sun. Where are you going? Midgard, which is what you call Earth. Sif laughed. I know you definitely want to go, but you can't find anything to do. Oh, what's the matter this time? Ron got a little interested. The God King asked me to put Tesseract into Norse cult. Sif said, holding the Tesseract. Looking at the Tesseract in Sif's hand, Ron sighed again that Odin was old. He's scared enough to keep infinite gems by his side. In fact, there is nothing wrong with thinking this way. Because for the unambitious, infinite gems will only bring other ambitious people to covet. That's why Odin threw the Tesseract to the earth, and then threw the reality gem to the collector. Because he fears the disaster that the infinite gems will bring to Asgard. Odin isn't that God King with ambitions to collect infinite gems anymore. As it happens, it is Sif who does this kind of thing. It can be seen that Odin still trusts the Sif brothers and sisters. Heimdall guards Bifrost, and Sif specializes in this kind of hidden work. Before that, Brynhild, the Valkyrie, did it. Let's go then, you go to Bifrost, I'll go straight there. Remember to put this on when you get to Earth. Ron threw the invisibility cloak to Sif. Sif nodded immediately, not worried about Ron at all. Ron looked in Bifrost's direction. When he saw Bifrost open and close, he set off. Although he can teleport directly to the Earth, he only teleports to the outside of the 9 realms. Because he is experiencing the situation of flight in the universe. The constitution of the Asgardians cannot survive in the universe, at most it can only survive for a period of time. But Kryptonians are different. Like an explosion, although there was no sound, Ron's body flew straight out. And in an instant, his speed reached the speed of sound. Then supersonic, light, and even constantly faster. If it wasn't for Ron's supervision, he wouldn't be able to see the changes in front of him. 9 realms flashed directly beside him. 2 minutes. In just 2 minutes, Ron arrived on Earth. His clothes were just a little wrinkled, but not damaged. This is also obtained by system sign-in. Rui Rogue. It can change with the user's mind, and has the property of being indestructible. Smoothing out the folds, Ron saw Sif at a glance above the atmosphere. I have to say, this looks really cool. Using magic is convenient, and anything can be solved at will with just a spell. But this is a personal experience. Even Ron, the salty fish who likes to bask in the sun on weekdays, is very cool. His speed was so fast that he teleported, and Sif didn't realize how he appeared beside him. "Teacher, you are so fast," Sif said with a strange expression. Quote. Ron glared at her. At the moment, the two are in Norway, which is where the previous Norwegian war took place. Tønsberg. After the Asgard Protoss disappeared, the Norse religion established a church here and sealed the area. Apparently they valued the rare places where miracles took place. At the moment, many believers have discovered the two. Ron also noticed that someone seemed to be watching. This feeling was noticed when he was close to the earth. His current insight is very strong. Definitely, the reason why he was discovered by the other party was also because his arrival was too arrogant. Sif wearing a cloak instantly turned into a serious expression, looking like a cold goddess of war. The believers in the distance approached tremblingly, and they already knew the identities of the two. Just like the history recorded in the book, a beam of light descended from the sky, and then the gods appeared. Therefore, the believers all worshipped on the ground, not even daring to speak. Until the arrival of the Pope. The Norse religion believes in Odin, and the church seems to have a certain connection with Asgard. Otherwise, Odin would not want to store Tesseract here. "I have seen two great gods. I am Pope Gardner. I don't know the identities of the two great gods," Pope Gardner said excitedly. "I even wanted to kneel down and kiss their shoes. Because in his lifetime, he actually saw a miracle. This happened for real, not in a book," Sif said with a cold expression. "I am Sif, the goddess of war, and the God King asked me to come here for business." Sif glanced at it, and the Pope immediately let the crowd disperse. Then enter the church with Sif and Ron. Ron didn't say his identity, and the Pope naturally didn't dare to ask more. The Pope already knew who Sif was, the goddess of land and harvest and goddess of war. Definitely, this is the name left over from the myths written by the previous people. Because Sif's performance in the Battle of Norway was also very impressive and her strength was very strong, her name naturally spread. Pope Gardner asked, "I don't know what the King of God has ordered." "The King of God wants to store this treasure on earth. Remember, don't let anyone get it, and you can't act rashly." Sif took out the box containing Tesseract and signaled the church not to mess around. Pope Gardner immediately assured, "Don't worry, goddess, we swear to the death that no one will get it." Gardner's serious face makes people feel very reliable. The fact turned out to be the case. Tesseract didn't reappear until I don't know how many generations of popes were killed by Red Skull. As for how they release it, it has nothing to do with Sif. Satisfied, Sif gave him the box and looked at Ron. "Two great gods, why don't you stay a little longer?" The Pope seemed to see that the two wanted to leave, so he took the initiative to persuade them to stay. He still wants to get in touch with the gods up close. "Maybe you can live forever. Because hundreds of years have passed since the goddess of war, Sif, is still young. No wonder it is a god." No, Ron wasn't used to being called a god. "I always feel that this name is a bit weird." Sif also nodded, and then Ron disappeared directly with Sif. The Pope was a little disappointed, but he still hurriedly asked for the most powerful craftsman to come over. He is going to keep the treasures of God King Odin well. Surely no one can get it. Chapter 31. Seeing that the Pope had no selfish intentions, Ron and Sif left completely. The figures of the two appeared on a high mountain. Sif questioned Ron with his eyes. Ron ignored her, but said loudly, "Come out, there should be no one else here." When he was close to the earth, he felt someone spying on him. At the moment didn't disappear either. This made him a little unhappy. After he finished speaking, the other party didn't play tricks, but a golden circle appeared not far from the two of them, and then slowly opened. Seeing the spell, Ron narrowed his eyes. "Kamar Taj." A gray-haired old man got out of it. Then he looked at Ron and the two with a smile on his face. "A friend from Asgard, I didn't know that before, so I looked it up." The other party confessed directly. This attitude made Sif relax a bit. Sif was a little nervous when he saw the spell. "Midgard also has a powerful mage like you?" Sif asked. "Yes, I am the supreme mage of Earth." "Ancient One?" Ron asked. The other party glanced at Ron and smiled. "No, Ancient One hasn't reached the time when she becomes the supreme mage." "Definitely, she's very capable. Perhaps only Strange can surpass her achievements. Ron twitched the corner of his mouth. It's really difficult to deal with people who can see the future. Wrong. It seems that the God King's decision was wrong. The two gems cannot be placed too close together. Ron looked at him and said, he can see the future, which means he has got the time gem. So, Ron could more or less guess who he was. I won't let two gems get too close. May I ask your identity? My name is Agamotto. Agamotto said. Sure enough, the supreme mage who did not know how to get the time gem and made Eye of Agamotto. Definitely, this is only in the cinematic universe. In the setting of the comics, Agamotto is the prehistoric supreme mage a million years ago. It is rumored to be a duplication of Agamotto in the Trinity Visandi. In front of this, it should not be possible. So, Ron became eager to try. Let me see the strength of Supreme Mage, Ron said with a smile. Then, Agamotto was tactful and directly opened the mirror space. Sif glanced at Ron in surprise, and then ran away directly under the gesture of his eyes. Boom! Ron squatted with his legs, and then he exploded in front of Agamotto. His fist smashed directly at Agamotto, regardless of whether the opponent's old bones could bear it. Agamotto stretched out his hands, and two red rings emerged in his hands. Ring of Ragador. Ron's fist hit the ring, and although it shattered, Agamotto was not injured. Although, this has something to do with Ron saving his strength. Then Ron used magic to fight Agamotto. Agamotto showed a surprised expression. Because Ron used spells that he had never seen before. He didn't expect Ron to be a mage. Although Kamar Taj is basically a melee mage, especially Ancient One will carry forward the melee mage. But few mages are as physically fit as Ron. It can be said that basically no one can achieve it. The two used all kinds of dazzling spells, causing the entire mirror space to tremble. From time to time, flames rolled across, and lightning appeared suddenly from time to time, breaking through the limitation of the mirror image space. Crack. The mirror space is like a mirror, with cracks beginning to appear. Then, boom, like a big rock hitting the calm water, the mirrored space collapsed. Ron and Agamotto also stopped in time. Agamotto put his hands behind his back, trembling constantly. Ron, on the other hand, was a little unsure. Well, Agamotto is no match for him. If it weren't for seeing him as Supreme Mage, an Asgardian on Earth, Ron wouldn't have kept his hands like this. Kamar Taj's spells are still very fancy, but the spells recorded by Merlin are all very practical. It's not that Kamar Taj's spells aren't practical, it's just that they're too fancy and pretty. For example, Hogarth's ancient body directly turned Ron's spells into butterflies flying away. Agamotto couldn't continue to pretend to be an expert in front of the two of them, so he immediately said, "Since you two still have something to do, I won't bother you." After that, he opened the portal directly and left as if fleeing. Quote. The Sif who watched the battle didn't know what to say. Teacher, why is the mirror space he used just now the same as yours? It's just a spell. Sif understood something and nodded without saying a word. Earth has such a powerful mage. Then, she sighed with emotion. Agamotto's strength is indeed very strong. At least it would be no problem to hang her. He won't be the strongest. Ron laughed. Agamotto has said that both Ancient One and Strange have higher abilities than him. Definitely, the most abnormal must be Strange. Strange is the favorite of Trinity Visandi. Later Trinity Vishanti even turned to Strange for help. You can see his ability. It can be called the number one supreme mage of all time. Sif seemed to understand but half understood. Master, shall we go back to Asgard? No, turn around first. Ron did want to take a spin. He didn't have this ability to travel around the world before, but now. It doesn't even take a few minutes to fly around the world. Therefore, he also experienced the feeling of a flight with Sif in his arms. Even with Sif's constitution, when she was flying under Ron's hand, the wind felt a bit too strong, and it seemed to scrape her face like a knife. The main reason is that the speed is too fast. With Ron getting stronger and stronger, Sif has believed his words that basking in the sun will make him stronger. Ron took Sif to the grasslands, deep forests, and ice fields. These are all scenes of the Earth that Ron has never seen before, and it is nearly 1,000 years earlier than later generations. Therefore, the natural landscape is more beautiful. Definitely, Ron wasn't there for the view. but to find some people, to see if these people exist. Egypt. It's supposed to be ancient Egypt. Ron's mental power spread, and at the same time he turned on his super hearing. With his current mental strength and super hearing, it is not impossible to hear the movement of the entire Earth. It's just that it might be a bit of a stretch. But at the moment is just in Egypt, it's easy. Quite a while. Sif saw Ron open his eyes. I don't know what Ron was looking for, but I'm sure there are no results. Indeed, Ron didn't find the person he was looking for. The reason why he came here is to see if there is apocalypse in this world. Now the answer tells him, no. Because as long as Apocalypse is alive, it is impossible to escape his hunt. But now, there is no voice in the whole of Egypt to discuss Apocalypse, and his spiritual power has not found an abnormal person. That means, this is a pure MCU world, there is no so-called mutant. That's not a conclusion Ron just came to casually. Because he took Sif around the world before, just to find out if there is such a thing as mutant. The existence of mutant is a long time ago. Although Apocalypse is known as the first mutant, he is not actually counted. If you have to count, the Black Queen in Legendary is even older than him. It is rumored that she lived for more than 10,000 years. If she existed, Ron would surely be able to find her too. However, Ron searched all over the world, but there was no mutant. So he can confirm that this is a world without mutant. In fact, it doesn't matter to Ron whether there are mutants or not. He just didn't want to take a look at it. Come on, back to Asgard. Ron said to Sif. He doesn't want to get in touch with people of this era. Because it doesn't make any sense. Asgardians rarely make friends with Earthlings, because longevity is a big issue. To the people of Asgard, 100 years is just a short time. But for people on Earth, it is a lifetime. Maybe the next time we meet, we will only be able to see the juniors of our friends. Therefore, Asgardians don't come to Earth very often. Only a few weirdos choose to escape to Earth. Ron looked up at the universe. He has supervision, which allows him to see things that others can't. In the most powerful period, it can even see through the universe. So, he saw an extra existence suddenly appeared in the galaxy of at the moment. I'll take you back to Asgard, don't call Heimdall. Ron said in a low voice to Sif. Although Sif didn't know what happened, he still nodded obediently. Then Ron opened the portal and took Sif directly back to Asgard from Earth. He didn't say much to Sif, but just disappeared. Sif felt a little apprehensive, but still obediently waited. Milky Way. If you have to talk about file size, the entire 9 realms may be larger than the Milky Way. After all, the 9 realms can be said to be 9 universes, but the relationship is not like this. Many areas of the 9 realms are not used, and due to the land area and the like, the 9 realms are within the Milky Way. The macroscopic 9 realms contains a universe that is definitely larger than the Milky Way, but the 9 realms that Ron and the others mentioned are only inside the Milky Way. Ron's figure rushed out of the 9 realms, and then flew in the universe faster than the speed of light. Even if people saw him, they just thought it was a shooting star. Just when Ron wanted to continue to approach the target, an infinite crisis suddenly rose in his heart. It seems that if you continue to get close, your life will be in danger. So, Ron stopped immediately. What happened? This is a situation that he has not encountered in the past 2,000 years in this world. Even when facing God King Odin at the beginning, I didn't have this feeling in my heart. Then there is only one explanation, the existence he saw in his eyes is much stronger than he imagined. So, Ron stopped quickly, and put on the invisibility cloak. At critical moments, items produced by the system are more reliable. So, Ron just watched from afar, and then listened from afar. What he saw was a strangely dressed man. Wears strange armor and a long chef hat with 2 horns. Then, the man descended directly into the planet in front of him. There are many planets in the Milky Way, and Ron has long known that not only the Earth has life, so he is not surprised that there are living things on this planet. This planet has become my food, I will give you the last day, enjoy life. The voice of this person spread throughout the planet, and Ron immediately took out the crystal of true knowledge after he entered. Planet. Food. Ron thought of a name. That is the famous planet devourer, the invincible Uncle Ton in Legendary. Well, definitely his results are miserable every time he appears. Basically it can be called a 10,000 round. As an individual, he can defeat the invincible Uncle Ton. Just then, Ron saw a person find each other. Who are you? Nolan, I want to negotiate terms with you. What conditions? I can help you find a suitable planet for food. As a condition, you have to let go of my home planet. Make a deal. Seen as Uncle Ton by Ron, he agreed directly. Then, he opened his mouth and said, I, the devourer of the planet, give you the power to follow me. Afterwards, Galactus directly threw a cloud of cosmic energy. After Nuo Lin touched this group of cosmic energy, he was directly transformed by this force. His body instantly formed a layer of silver shell. Silver Surfer. Definitely, at the same time, all his memories and feelings disappeared. So the Silver Surfer pointed to his home planet and said, that planet is edible. Galactus shook his head and said, I made a promise with a respectable person that I can't eat that one. I see. A surfboard-like object formed under the Silver Surfer's feet, dragging him directly into the universe and flying away. After looking at the other party's direction, he left the Milky Way directly. Ron, who was watching from a distance, finally breathed a sigh of relief after Galactus also disappeared. Ridicule of Galactus belongs to ridicule of Galactus. But his strength is beyond doubt. Before Ron got close to him, there was a feeling of death. In other words, it cannot be described as him, but as him. Galactus is undoubtedly a godlike existence. He is much more powerful than the average god. Moreover, Galactus is a mass of pure energy. It's just what kind of existence he is in the eyes of different races. In the eyes of humans, his appearance is human. But in the eternal view of the five great gods, Galactus is just a mass of energy. In any case, the incident can be said to be in the past. Ron followed along a bit, making sure the Silver Surfer wasn't interested in Earth. If Galactus really wants to swallow the Earth, Ron doesn't even know whether he should take action. Fortunately, perhaps because of the center of the universe, the Earth has never been destroyed despite constant disasters. Galactus went around the galaxy without seeing the Earth. Soon, Ron saw that the Silver Surfer had found a suitable planet. Galactus then simply devoured the planet. Galactus represents balance in the universe, so his presence is necessary. Definitely, the so-called phagocytosis does not mean eating the entire planet. Instead, after being devoured, only the surface layer of the planet was left, and all living things and water were devoured by him. However, Ron still saw the Silver Surfer come out with a blue-skinned little girl in his arms, and then threw her into a planet to fend for itself. Perhaps it was the kindness of the Silver Surfer that allowed the little girl to survive. In fact, the nature of the Silver Surfer is not bad. At the moment, even though thoughts and memories are gone, he still has a little kindness and love. But, this little girl wanted to commit suicide. Seeing the other party's blue skin, Ron suddenly thought of something. So he rushed over directly, interrupting the little girl's thoughts of suicide. The girl looked at Ron warily, her eyes full of hatred. It made Ron feel that Galactus was indeed a bit cruel. Although he has the name of Cosmic Balance, how is it different from Purple Sweet Potato Jing, the director of the Family Planning Office, to erase the life of a planet casually? Relax, I'm not a bad person. What's your name? My name is Ron Kidman, you can call me Ron. Ron knelt down and asked. The little girl was confused for a moment. Then he said firmly, my name is Supergiant. Ron gave a small smile, and sure enough. Why do you want to kill yourself? Because I want to die. Said the little girl named Supergiant. I can give you death, but you have to follow me. Ron said casually, and Supergiant agreed without even thinking about it. Because she at the moment only wants revenge and death. The sudden disappearance of her planet left her with no idea of survival. Facing Ron who suddenly appeared, although she didn't know how to kill her, she still agreed to follow. Perhaps, just a belief to live. Ron didn't expect that this trip would be rewarding. Supergiant, later one of the 5 generals of Obsidian. That's right, it's the Purple Potato Spirit Thanos' subordinates, who have the Obsidian 5 generals and the Dark Order under his command. Although Ron has long since put Purple Sweet Potato Essence in his eyes. After all, whether it is Purple Sweet Potato Essence or the 5 generals of Obsidian, they are actually not too strong. Ron at the moment can easily beat them. Not to mention Ron. If Thor can simply recognize Hela as the king of gods, then whether Thanos can beat Asgard is a problem. Hela can basically fight Thanos. It can be said that the reason why Purple Sweet Potato Essence can collect all infinite gems is entirely because there are no tigers in the mountains, and monkeys are kings. The Supreme Mage Ancient One wanted to die. God King Odin also chose to die by coincidence, and Hela and Asgard were even made Ragnarok by Thor's stupidity. Under various chances and coincidences, Thanos was able to successfully collect infinite gems. So, Ron really didn't take Thanos seriously. Definitely, it's okay to be sick of him now. Take a supergiant, and the 5th general of Obsidian will become the 4th general of Obsidian. But, as if Thanos invaded later, the supergiant never showed up. Let's go home first, Ron said to Supergiant. A trace of confusion suddenly flashed in Supergiant's eyes full of hatred. Go home. Looking at the psychologically distorted Supergiant, Ron suddenly didn't know whether this decision was a good one or a bad one. Let's train her slowly first to see if she can change. Don't ask her to wish for world peace, but at least not so extreme. Then, Ron directly released a spaceship. After all, he no longer knows which galaxy he appeared in. He can fly back by himself, but Supergiant can't survive in the universe. This spaceship was also signed by Ron, so it can be put into the system space. Otherwise, he would have no place to store such a big guy. The Millennium Falcon, the spaceship of the Star Wars world, known as the most famous spaceship in the universe. That's right, what Ron got was the famous Millennium Falcon in Star Wars. It was originally a light cargo ship converted by Han Solo, not a combat type. Definitely, its record is still impressive. The biggest achievement is to wound the Sith Lord Darth Vader. The Millennium Falcon is only 34.75 meters long and can only accommodate 2 flight crew members and 6 passengers. But, for at the moment's Ron and Supergiant, enough is enough. Are you ready? This is my first time flying a spaceship. Ron smiled and touched Supergiant's head. Supergiant immediately opened his hand. Little Supergiant is still very cranky. But hearing Ron's words, he still felt a little nervous. She feels a little bad. Sit tight. Ron took a casual look, and his mighty brain learned how to fly the Millennium Falcon. He basks in the sun every day, but it has improved him in an all-round way. This constitution includes not only the strength and other aspects, but also the improvement of intelligence and so on. So, Superman Clark isn't a brat, he's smart. It's just that he is so strong that he doesn't need to think. The appearance of the Millennium Falcon is like a disc, with 2 4-tube laser cannons in front, so it protrudes a little. At the moment, a circle behind the Millennium Falcon suddenly burst into a strong light, and then flew out from the ground in an instant. Ron just hoped the Millennium Falcon wouldn't have so many glitches. Although it was originally known for its faults. Not long after the Millennium Falcon left the planet, a large group of space battleships surrounded the planet. You can tell by the icons and flags on them. It is the notorious Dark Order in this universe. Ron drove straight back to Asgard in the Millennium Falcon. Asgard's port is very large, and during the time the Millennium Falcon stayed, there were countless spaceships and aircrafts landing and leaving. Moreover, the bottom of the port is completely empty clouds, as if the whole person can jump off the 9 realms from here. So the control is not so strict. Although he will register when he goes out, Ron is still a bit privileged. After all, he has lived here for a long time, and Sif and Brennhild have taken good care of him. So not an invisible person. It's easy with a little privilege. However, seeing a blue-skinned little girl of unknown race alight from Ron's spaceship, many people still have objections. If placed on the Earth of future generations, then the Asgard people definitely have the biggest racial discrimination in the world. Asgardians are proud, self-confident, and although they look hospitable, they are just that. Asgardians hate other races in Asgard the most. So, you don't see many people of other races in Asgard. You come, and the people of Asgard welcome you. But you want to stay here. Stop dreaming and get out of here. This is the invisible discrimination of the people of Asgard. For this reason, Ron had to put a cloak on Supergiant to cover her whole body. In addition, she lowered her head again, so gradually not many people cared. Although Supergiant lowered his head, his eyes kept looking at the magnificent palace. The golden hall of God King Odin is too conspicuous. I don't know how many slaves there were back then, and it took decades to build the palace for him. All of a sudden it brought huge amounts of shock to Supergiant. There is also the Bifrost that flickers from time to time in the distance. Although it is not turned on, the huge building still makes Supergiant curious. Ron took Supergiant back to his residence. Although he has lived in Asgard for more than 2,000 years, he is still a bachelor. Except for Brynhild and Sif who visit him from time to time, no one else has much to do with him. And, since the 9 worlds, he's cut down on Asgardian sociability, drinking. And those Asgard goddesses who wanted to hook up with Ron before saw that he didn't respond, and they all stayed away. Who doesn't have an ordinary face with a sense of substitution? So Supergiant will be safe. There's usually no one else here, Ron said to Supergiant. Supergiant then removed the hood from her cloak, revealing her hair. At the moment she still had hair, unlike when she grew up, she turned into a strong hairstyle. Hairstyles don't matter to Supergiant though, as her attire is always hidden under White's cloaked cape, revealing only one face. If you ignore Supergiant's skin color, her facial features are still very punctual. She did nothing else, just stood there looking at Ron. Have a rest. As Ron spoke, she found a place to sit down. Okay, it would be better if there was no hatred in the eyes. I can use spells to make you look like everyone else. Ron poured Supergiant a glass of water, handed it to her and said. No, Supergiant replied quickly, unwilling to change his skin color. Ron didn't insist either. The spell he's talking about is exactly what Odin used on Loki. Otherwise, as a child of the Frost Titan, how could Loki have the appearance of an Asgardian? Then you may not be able to go out very often. It does not matter. Supergiant is silent, basically just responding to Ron. It gave him some headaches. There wasn't much Ron could do about a kid who had been through this. You can rest in the room next to me tonight. Ron arranged it this way. Unexpectedly, Supergiant was very attached to him instead. No, I want to rest with you. No, you said you would die for me. Quote. Just stealing something, Thanos said. Ron the hell knows how to kill a Supergiant. Can't you just punch her to death? Well, that's fine. In this way, Ron had to comfort a little girl to sleep every day. Soon he also discovered that Supergiant didn't really want to die, it was just a way to vent his anger. Although the hatred in his eyes did not decrease in the slightest, his whole person gradually became more cheerful. Teacher, this is. Brynhild and Sif came together the day after Ron came back. Her name is Supergiant, and she is a poor child, Ron said, somewhat cryptically speaking about what happened to Supergiant. This naturally made the two feel compassionate. In addition, Supergiant is still young, so they still have a bit of maternal love. Although Supergiant was impatient with the two, she had no choice but to let them manipulate her when faced with 2 powerful Valkyries. Teacher, was she the one you were talking about? Sif asked Ron in a low voice. That's right, Ron said. He did not tell about Galactus. Because there is no need. When Sif and the others knew about it, they would feel terrified instead. After all, the existence of Galactus's strength is not something they can face. Neither can Odin. Even if it is Odin, facing the gods, only Odin's sword is destroyed, and the destroyer armor is directly melted into waste. What's more, there is still the existence of Galactus, who can beat ordinary gods. So, after Brynhild and Sif, Ron will train Supergiant again. The difference is that Supergiant usually sticks with him. It seems that he is regarded as the only relative. For this reason, Ron had no choice but to lose his winemaking job decisively. After getting along for a long time, Ron has confirmed that Supergiant will not become that crazy guy. The environment has a great influence on people. Under the education of love, by Ron, Brynhild and others, Supergiant is generally normal even though it is sometimes paranoid. Ron wondered why she'd become the 5 generals of Obsidian in the first place. That's all because of the environment of the Dark Order. For a person like Thanos who kills innocent people indiscriminately in the universe, it is strange that there are normal people under his command. So under the influence of his ears and eyes, Supergiant also became a crazy person. Help Thanos do all kinds of bad things, and be a minion for tigers. But for now, at least Supergiant is on track. Definitely, Ron also noticed the difference in her. He doesn't know what race Supergiant is. Although he has blue skin, there are too many blue-skinned races in this universe. And Supergiant himself can't tell. But she still showed her ability. Although her physical ability is incomparable with that of Asgard, her mental strength is too strong. Not long after coming to Asgard, I don't know if it was because she was stimulated by the previous things. She erupted with a powerful spiritual force. If it wasn't for Ron being a powerful mage, maybe the whole house would be overturned. Then Odin will know she exists. This surprised Ron. Then, the weak Supergiant said to Ron, "Ron, why can't I hear your voice?" "What sound?" Ron asked curiously. "I can hear other people's inner voice saying that I'm not Asgard, but I can't hear your inner voice." Supergiant blinked at Ron. Ron rolled his eyes at her. Supergiant actually mastered telepathy. That is, Ron also has mind-reading skills because of the Kryptonian constitution. "Supergiant, this ability cannot be used casually," Ron said seriously to Supergiant. "But I can't turn it off, and I don't want to hear it." Supergiant looked aggrieved. With the contact with Ron, she finally had the emotions of a child. Instead of being rigid like before, with only hatred and sadness in his eyes. Ron pinched her face, and was knocked off by the Supergiant as usual. It was this little trick that brought Supergiant back to normal. Whenever this time, Supergiant will whiten Ron with her very white eyeballs. Ron's eyes were also imitated by her. "Come on, let me teach you how to control it," Ron said to Supergiant. Supergiant's mental power is actually similar to his spells. Isn't mage just a kind of use of spiritual power and mana? The stronger mage's mental power, the stronger his ability to control. So it makes sense. Ron then taught Supergiant how to control his mental power. Definitely, there is no less physical exercise. Just not as intense as Brennhild and Sif. After all, Supergiant's physical fitness is not good originally, it can only be regarded as the average level in the universe. The physical quality and density of the Asgard people is about 3 times that of the common people. This is still the Asgardians of the common. Like Sif, Brennhild, etc., I don't know how many times. At least Brennhild can lift dozens of tons with ease. In terms of physical fitness, Supergiant is really no match for Asgard. But her spiritual power is beyond the reach of most Asgards. Otherwise, she would not be valued by Thanos and become one of the 5 generals of Obsidian. Ron ended up choosing to teach her a little simple technique to strengthen her body a bit. At least it won't be her weakness. Marvel's melee mage is innumerable. So mage cannot fight melee, but he can't be in bad health. 10 years passed by, and Ron didn't get any good things by signing in. However, Supergiant's physical fitness has improved a lot. Except Ron helped her with magic. Ron also tried to see if the Supergiant could use those potions. Because of the medicine he got at the daily check-in, he didn't feel any improvement at all. Might as well bask in the sun every day. Therefore, these medicines are tasteless to Ron. Before there is no Superman template, it may be very useful for him, so that his physical fitness can slowly surpass many Asgard people. But now, he can beat almost all races in this universe without the need for potions. So Ron used the potion on Supergiant. It really worked for Supergiant. So after more than 10 years, Supergiant has developed the habit of drinking potions every day, just like drinking beverages every day. Naturally, her physical fitness gradually became stronger. Not as good as the Asgardians, but still out of the average. Definitely, for Supergiant, the main improvement is its own ability. In addition to the initial telepathy, her ability has been developed more and more powerful. Ron feels that her ability is a bit like Professor X. It's all spiritual. For example, mind control and teleportation. For those who are mentally weak, Supergiant can control the opponent with a single thought. And the number is huge, I believe it will not be much weaker than Professor X. Just like the powerful Black Bolt King, who was controlled by Supergiant in the comics. As for spiritual transmission, it is even simpler, just like sending a message through the air, you can speak directly in your heart. I have to say that this kind of ability is very annoying for common people. Because Supergiant can easily know what you're thinking. Unless you can keep your mind clear. Brennhild and Sif told Supergiant more than once not to eavesdrop on their thoughts. Sif once wanted to beat up Supergiant, but she was quickly controlled by Supergiant in turn. Who knows what Supergiant would have done with Sif if Ron hadn't found out and stopped it. Supergiant only listens to Ron now, not everyone else. This is also the only advantage she has been sticking to since she was a child. To everyone else, Supergiant is a Trask. The most important ability of Supergiant is memory stealing. She can steal other people's memories and cause them to lose their memory. It's just that these abilities of Supergiant are rarely used on humans. Other Asgards rarely see her. Ron was still very protective of her. Except for the first time someone saw Supergiant coming to Asgard with him, few outsiders had seen her. If they knew there were other races in Asgard, those people would have fallen out. After all, Asgard is the most exclusive of the 9 realms. Even if the Elves of Light and the Warner Protoss come, they will not be able to please them. This is also the reason why the Warner Protoss is unwilling to stay in Asgard. Ron, when are we going to other planets? Supergiant asked. She's been asking Ron that question since she got telepathy. Ron said at the time that he would leave Asgard, but did not say when. So Supergiant asks every once in a while. Wait a little longer. Ron had no choice but to reply. Although I don't know how long the Supergiant's lifespan is, it is certainly not short. Otherwise, she would not be able to become the 5th general of Obsidian. At least not as short-lived as the common people. Why did you have to leave Asgard? Brennhill asked curiously. I hate it here, Supergiant said directly. Brennhill has no choice. After all, Asgard people are too repulsive to Supergiant. The few people who know her will discriminate in their hearts even if they don't express it on the surface. But this can't be hidden from Supergiant. In fact, the teacher can take her to the 9 realms for a while. The 9 realms are very safe now. Brennhill looked at Ron. With Frost Titan being thoroughly educated, the 9 realms finally settled down. The Flame Titan Surta was sealed by Odin, and the treasure casket of ancient winters of the Frost Titan was taken away by Odin. Let the 2 worlds have no capital to resist, at most they can only protect their rights a little bit. As for the Dark Elves, you don't even need to look at it. Asgard wants to make them exterminate very easily. Even the Dark Kingdom couldn't find a few Dark Elves. Asgardians are not used to that kind of environment, so the Dark Kingdom has been abandoned. At that time, if the Dark Elves were not too arrogant and wanted to bring the 9 realms to darkness, God King Bor might not have beaten them. So the Valkyrie army rested again. Brennhill and Sif can run this way. Wait a while, I'll take Supergiant to play in the universe. How long? Well, hundreds of years. Ron stroked his chin and said. My God. Supergiant rolled her eyes, and she felt tormented just thinking about it. I said it's okay to make you look like everyone else, and you don't want to. Ron could only shake his head and laugh. I do not want it. Supergiant is still stubborn. Soon, Brennhill left. Supergiant still muttered. Asgard people are so annoying. I hate it too, Ron asked, patting her head. You are different. Also, can you stop hitting me on the head? Supergiant said, putting on the hat directly. Ron thought that she shaved her head bald, otherwise, how could her black hair disappear by itself? Why am I different? Ron continued asking. You are Ron. Supergiant was confident. It would be great if you were the king of gods. After speaking, both of them paused. Ron fumbled with his chin, and said, but I don't want to be too tired. We can cultivate our own influence, and then you are behind the scenes. Supergiant looked Ron in the eyes and said. Ron saw something in her eyes. Called ambition. You put it this way, it's not impossible to master Asgard. Ron said so suddenly. Odin reluctantly, no matter whether he is cruel or kind, he is at least a good god king. But what about after Odin died? Is it necessary to let Thor, a foolish man, be the god king like before? And then there's Loki, a guy who's done nothing, messing around and throwing the 9 realms into chaos. This is unacceptable to Ron. The reason Ron wanted to be strong at the time was to avoid this situation. So, he suddenly thought of the scene when Odin pressed the eternal spear to the forehead of the Frost Titan King Loth. At the moment he had an idea. A man should be like this. He can replace it. I want to be the king of God. Ron said proudly. Odin can take it, why can't he take it? Odin was not originally a god king, but he snatched this position and sealed the god of fear, Orochi, so there was God King Odin. For Ron, it's just a turn of events. But now, Odin has no ambitions, and his descendants are not worthy of inheriting the throne. Only Ron can lead Asgard to the top. Hearing Ron's words, Supergiant smiled. Shall I help you control Brunhild and Sif? She asked coldly. No, the two of them will support me. Ron said with a headache. The childhood experience made Supergiant a little different from others. That is, she is more indifferent to life. A bit like the brutal Odin before, he doesn't care much about life, only for his own purpose. For Brunhild and Sif, Ron still has confidence. The reason why the two have the current strength is precisely because of him. Therefore, Ron felt that it would be enough to constantly look for opportunities to brainwash. Don't worry, we need a chance. I see. Supergiant nodded. Now is not a good time to turn around. No matter how you say it, Odin is also the king of gods. And well done, Asgard is lord of the 9 realms. Now even if Ron beat Odin to death, he would not be recognized by the Asgards. Just imagine the scene of Hela at that time. Even after Hela escaped and came to Asgard, no one recognized her, and the Asgard warriors all launched suicide attacks on her. Even in the end, Hela faced a situation where the wall was overthrown by everyone. Is Hela wrong? Not at all. Anyone who knows her knows that she is more suitable to be a god king than Thor. It's just that she has no righteousness and has not been recognized by the Asgard people. Therefore, the most difficult thing for Ron is not how to win the position of God King, but how to make the Asgard people recognize him. He didn't want to lose all his subordinates when he became the God King. Killing is not a solution. Ron, who has rich experience, knows that it takes time to seize the position of God King. For example, when Asgard was about to be destroyed, he appeared like a savior. So, Ron just told Supergiant to be patient. Because in the eyes of him who knows the future, all this will not be too far away. After waiting for more than 2,000 years, how little time is left? In the following time, neither Ron nor Supergiant mentioned this matter. Nor did Supergiant say he was leaving. She wants to use her ability to help Ron become the king of God. Her ability is very effective in this regard. Can control others and steal other people's memories. In the future, the ability to implant memories into others may even be developed. This, not even Ron can do. After all, he only has super hearing and mind reading skills. Where's that stupid Thor? Ron then proceeded to ask Sif and Brunhild some questions about Thor and Loki. Still want to fight all day long? Sif said disdainfully. After following Ron for a long time, it is natural to disdain the habit of seeing Thor. After all, she is no longer a goddess of war who only thinks about force. Ron nodded and said, I don't know what Odin is thinking. If Thor is allowed to inherit the throne, Asgard will be finished. Listening to Ron's casual remark, both Sif and Brunhild nodded in agreement. It's really that Thor is too naive, he is just a little kid. They are very dissatisfied with Thor. If it weren't for the status of Prince Thor, Sif wouldn't even talk to him. Ron saw it and didn't say anything more. It's still a long time. First let the two of them think in their hearts that Thor is not suitable to inherit the throne, and things will be easy to handle. By the time Valkyrie and the female warrior Shendu did not support Thor. It is not so easy for Thor to become the God King. Thor, that idiot who can only swing a hammer around. It's good for him to be the king of gods. At that time, anyone can bully Asgard. I heard that Ragnarok will happen because of him. Supergiant continued to make up the knife next to her, and Ron gave her a thumbs up. Hearing Supergiant's words, Sif and Brunhild thought of Thor. Exactly what she said, just swinging around with a hammer. Especially Brunhild, she fought with Hela. Although Hela was sealed, but Hela's original demeanor is still vivid in her memory. This so-called Mjolnir was like a toy in Hela's hands, but Thor was a treasure. Therefore, Brunhild shook his head subconsciously. Thor is worse than Loki, at least not so stupid. Definitely, I don't like Loki either, he's so gloomy and makes me feel bad. Sif continued. Brunhild nodded in agreement again. Afterwards, everyone discussed this topic. It seems that several of Odin's descendants are not suitable to inherit the throne. Or maybe it's Odin himself. Who told him that he couldn't cultivate offspring? A Hela has become a war madman, a Thor has become an Iron Man who can only play with hammers, and Loki can only intrigue. It is difficult to gain their favor. Thor is a little better, after all, he has the boldness and warlikeness of the Asgardians. As friends, Brynhild and the two think he is not bad. But if they wanted Thor to be the king of gods, they shook their heads subconsciously. In the following time, there will be many such discussions. Ron and Supergiant seem to be giving them psychological hints. Don't think Ron is being too mean, because he doesn't expect Brendan and Sif to be on his opposite side. So, that's all. Successful sign-in, continuous sign-in for 2,600 years, and reward, the left of the throne. The left side of the throne, also known as the right hand of God, it can add holy light attributes to all items. This is a special skill. Holy light attribute. In fact, Ron didn't have a good impression of the holy light. He only had one sentence when he thought of the holy light. The holy light is fooling you. But now that I have it, I feel good about it. As for why the left side of the God seat is the right hand of the God, he thought about it and understood. Isn't the left side of the throne the right hand of Gabriel? After learning this skill, Ron didn't pay much attention. After all, he doesn't really like the holy light attribute. The reason he left the mountain today was because of Karlnila. He came to Nornheim again. He had said he would never come to Norn again. However, who in this world can escape Dr. Wang's law? It smells so good. Although Karlnila calls herself Queen of the Norn is not much different from before. After so many years, basically no changes, the streets are still very old and even dirty. After all, it has always been in Asgard territory, and they can't do anything without Asgard. So, it's still Asgard that's supporting it. That's embarrassing. The so-called independence, the so-called Norn Queen. But Karlnila has nothing to do, but has to rely on Asgard. Otherwise, do people still have to eat? Do you want to drink? That's probably why Odin didn't talk to her at all. Because Norn doesn't have that self-sufficient ability. Therefore, the so-called Norn Queen is more like a joke. Even if Karlnila is very strong. Odin has already established this point. But Norn hasn't changed much, and Karlnila is still in full swing. Ron followed the guides to a small palace built by Karlnila. Then, after a briefing, I met Karlnila. After seeing Karlnila, Ron took off his glasses. Karlnila didn't expect Ron to come. After not seeing him for many years, Karlnila's temperament has completely changed. She was wearing a dark red bodysuit that flattered her figure well. There is also a cloak behind him, which seems to be favored by high-ranking Asgardians. Plus a silver-white crown and earrings on black hair. Cooperating with the superior temperament she has honed over the years, Karlnila does have the demeanor of a queen. Karlnila stood up from the throne with his hands on his hands, and walked slowly to Ron. She knew that Ron was very powerful, so she put him on an equal footing. Your item is really miraculous. I have seen it before, but this time I couldn't remember it at the first time. Of course she was talking about Superman glasses, this metaphysical thing. It does not matter. Ron put his glasses away. What is that important? You haven't come to see me for many years. I believe you came to see me for something. Karlnila turned around and smiled lightly. She has an elegance that she never had before, and she is more calm in her work. Importantly, Norn hasn't changed much under your leadership, which disappoints me. Ron sighed, a little disappointed. Disappointment. Karlnila turned around sharply, but quickly suppressed his anger. Yes, I thought that the Norn people would become rich and have more status under your leadership, but I didn't expect that you were only using it to satisfy yourself. They are very dissatisfied with you, Queen Norn. Ron still had the look of hating iron but not steel. Karlnila frowned, but did not open his mouth to refute. She snorted coldly, stretched out her hand and shook off the cloak and said, "If you came to mock me, you have already done it. Karl, I always thought you were an ambitious person, but I didn't expect you to be defeated by Odin so quickly." Ron shook his head. If Asgard can give Norn more resources, it will definitely get better, but it's impossible, and Norn can't get more resources, and they can't beat Asgard. Karlnila gritted her teeth and said that she didn't dare to fight Asgard. I can only do a little trick secretly. But this is of no use to Asgard, nor to Norn. So, I'm here to ask you to cooperate. Ron laughed. Wouldn't it be easy to develop Norn as long as the two of us join forces and control Asgard? How to do it? Karlnila looked at Ron, and her eyes flashed with ambition. She wouldn't have chosen to be a Norn queen if she hadn't been ambitious. Wasn't it good to join Valkyrie at that time? Help me become the God King of Asgard. What do you want to do then is not a matter of one sentence. Ron squeezed Karl's chin. Karlnila tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then he said, then I will become the Queen of God. This matter is not urgent, the important thing is that we still need to wait. Ron put the matter off lightly. Karlnila naturally knows the importance of timing. So she said with a smile, what I am best at is waiting. In Asgard, in Norn, I don't know how long I have been waiting. I hope this time I won't be made to wait too long. Will not. Ron thought about the timeline. He had good intentions, and he couldn't bear the fact that so many creatures in Asgard were killed and injured because of the Odin family's infighting. Thinking of the tragic situation in Asgard later, Ron strengthened his determination. With the support of Karlnila, Brynhild and others, all Ron needs is prestige. No reputation is not enough, no one knows him, how can he recognize him? Just like Hela, when she came out, no one in Asgard knew who she was. You say you are a big princess or a big princess. Who would believe it? Therefore, Asgard warrior launched an attack on her without any hesitation. Think she's an intruder. ... Thor, I have communicated with your mother, I hope you can marry Sif. Odin, the one-eyed god king, called Thor, and ordered. As Heimdall's younger sister, Sif has good ability and status. From the very beginning, Odin wanted to appoint two people. However, it seems that Sif is not interested in Thor, so he has been procrastinating. Until now, Odin felt that only Sif was the most suitable, so he decided to let Thor take the initiative. Isn't my relationship with Sif okay? Thor asked in a daze. Odin is speechless. Sif clearly dislikes you, is that okay? That's not what I mean, I want you to marry Sif. Odin said with restrained patience. What? Thor was immediately stunned. No, why not? I don't like her, she's too violent. Thor said in horror. Due to the changes brought by Ron, Sif not only did not become the four warriors behind Thor, nor did she worship Thor to fight. Just this fool, can he still fight? Sif himself can abuse the current Thor. Therefore, Thor was scared by Sif. After all, he is younger than Sif. Although Odin's son has outstanding ability, Sif has been trained by Ron for many years. Therefore, it is not surprising that Sif can beat Thor now. You know, before Thor's divine power awakening, he has always been the god of the hammer. Seeing Thor's disappointment, Odin immediately roared, then work hard to become stronger. For the first time, he doubted whether Thor's personality was suitable for inheriting the throne. On weekdays, he only knows how to fight, but now he is afraid of Sif. Thor left quickly, he didn't want to see his old father's angry face. But before he left Asgard's range, Loki came out of nowhere. Loki moved slowly behind Thor, a short sword in his hand. Enough, Loki. Thor turned around suddenly, grabbed Loki by the shoulders and fell straight to the ground. Boom! Loki stared at the sky with his eyes wide open. Was stunned by Thor's blow. The hand holding the dagger also trembled slightly. I tell you, I'm in a bad mood, don't mess with me. Thor whispered into Loki's ear, but his expression didn't change much. Obviously, this is not the first time that Loki, who he prefers to call the god of mischief, has come to trick and attack him. Thor, who has happened in various situations, directly subdued Loki with his backhand. Loki regained his composure and hurried after Thor. Although he was thrown, he didn't care. As Thor's younger brother, he has long been used to being beaten. He just wonders why Thor is angry now. Father wants me to communicate more with Sif. After being asked, Thor said awkwardly. Sif. Loki winced his neck. When he was a child, he once wanted to play a prank on Sif, saying that when Sif was asleep, he sneaked into Sif's room and wanted to cut off her beautiful hair. The result can be imagined. Sif directly beat up the young Loki, which directly cast a psychological shadow. I wonder why Sif is so strong. Thor didn't worry too much about it. Now he is just simply curious why Sif is so powerful. As for what Odin said about being close to Sif and building a good relationship, it seems impossible to him. He prefers the gentle and virtuous. Then let's go take a look and follow her. Loki saw Sif's figure sharply, and then suppressed the fear in his heart. Then, the two followed timidly. But Sif was very vigilant. She noticed something was wrong, and kept looking around, but she didn't find anything. Because Loki was raised by God Queen Frigga since he was a child, his physical fitness is not as good as Thor's ability in spells. As such, he was bred to be a powerful mage. Although this mage always likes to play melee. But Loki is good at illusion, so Sif can't find him. After all, Sif's magical attainments are not very outstanding. The people of Asgard are strange. Some people have excellent magical ability, but some have no magical ability at all. There is basically no such mediocre ability, including the two who stopped Sif in at the moment. Amora, Lorelei, what do you want to do? Sif asked with a cold face. I don't want to do anything, I just want to go with you. Amora also said with a cold face. She is a well-known cold beauty in Asgard, and she has completely different personalities from her younger sister Lorelei. So now even if they are begging for help, they are all cold-faced. Impossible, Ron won't be seeing you. Sif said disdainfully. Why, our ability is so good. Lorelei said unconvinced. Their abilities are indeed outstanding, and like Carl Nila, they did not learn magic through serious means. Then the ability above the magic is shown. Amora the Enchantress has various powerful abilities, but like Lorelei, she prefers to use magic to control others. Lorelei's ability is even simpler. As long as the opposite hears her voice, she will be controlled by her. It was by chance that they met Ron teaching Supergiant when they were secretly learning magic. So hooked up with Ron. However, when Ron found them, he threw them away. This is also his carelessness. Taking the Supergiant to exercise his ability does not require a mirror space. So it happened to be seen by the two Amora who were practicing the teleportation spell. What's the use of good ability? You're out of your mind. Sif looked at the two of them coldly. Both of them are too power-hungry, so Sif doesn't like it. Sif couldn't get rid of them, so he could only let them follow. Amora and the others naturally knew where Ron was, but they would be thrown away every time they came. So I hoped to follow Sif and Brynhild. They didn't expect Ron to be their teacher. One goddess of war, one the mightiest Valkyrie. Thor and Loki looked at each other. They were then brought by Sif to find Ron. Supergiant was still dressed in the same way. Looking at the two of Amora behind Sif, she frowned. If it weren't for these two being mages' strong mental power, Supergiant directly controlled them and killed themselves. It's so annoying. Sif, you brought too many people this time. Supergiant said with a frown. That idiot who only knows how to play with a hammer is also here. Quote. Hearing her words, Thor couldn't help it. What is an idiot who only knows how to play with a hammer? Hey, how do you talk? Thor couldn't help standing up to defend himself, and even Loki couldn't hide it. Amora had already discovered them. Thor, Loki, how dare you follow me? Sif's face immediately darkened. Then Supergiant said, you take care of them yourself. Thor swallowed. Listen, let me explain. Roll. The irritable Sif directly drew out his long sword and attacked. Her weapon was given by Odin back then. What a sarcasm. However, Thor did not sit still. He is now close to 1,000 years old, and his strength is getting stronger day by day. That's the good thing about being a child of Odin, and it only gets stronger with time. He took Mjolnir in his hand and immediately started to fight back. However, he was still beaten by Sif. In full view, Thor's face turned red when he was still seen by several women. Especially seeing Loki's obviously slightly mocking eyes. Boom! Thor, who was stimulated, broke out directly. A bolt of lightning pierced the sky, then burst into Asgard and landed directly on Thor. Thor was surrounded by lightning, and his strength increased by leaps and bounds in an instant. As a so-called Protoss, it is indeed unreasonable sometimes. For example, after being stimulated by Hela, Thor suddenly became supernaturally awakening. What's more, Wonder Woman's direct divine power awakening tore up Ares, the god of war who killed Zeus and other gods. At the moment Thor's strength suddenly became stronger, he hit Sif by surprise, and the long sword in his hand was knocked out by Mjolnir. Enough. A calm voice sounded beside Thor. For some reason, the fighting spirit in his heart suddenly disappeared, and then the whole person stood still, as if listening to a lullaby. Who are you? Looking at Ron, who suddenly teleported, Thor exclaimed. Just one sentence made him stop. Father and King can't do it, can they? I'm Ron. Ron didn't care, he didn't want to see Thor. But now, it's obviously a good time to gain reputation. Because Thor's movement just now was a bit loud, and the sudden thunderbolt directly made many people come here. After all, this is a plain area, even if you want mountains to resist it, it is impossible. I'm asking, what kind of god are you? Thor scratched his head a little naively. Ron smiled instead. Definitely, I am the Lord God of Asgard. Quote. Hearing his words, the surrounding onlookers were stunned. And someone has already recognized him. Isn't this Ron Kidman? Who is this? Ron, who only knows how to drink. Then he still dares to be so arrogant. How dare he brag in front of Prince Thor? Everyone talked a lot, which made Thor feel that he was bluffed. The name of the main god is too inappropriate. Therefore, Thor didn't even think about it, and punched directly with his blood surging. There is a saying that anger starts from the heart, and evil grows from the gallbladder. Thor at the moment is such a state. The name Ron is indeed a bit disrespectful. The chief god of Asgard. So, he punched Ron in the face with his fist. But, Thor felt as if Ron's hand had turned into a shadow. Boom! Before he could see how Ron made the shot, he flew upside down. Moreover, the force of this punch almost distorted his face. Thor's figure dragged directly on the ground for more than 10 meters long, and a very long trace indicated that this happened for real. For a moment, the onlookers were silent. The Ron they knew, who only knew how to drink, could knock Prince Thor flying with one punch. Thor lay on the ground and suddenly didn't want to move. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the blue sky white cloud. What a shame. He, the great prince of Asgard, the glory of the gods of the north. To be punched flying in full view. Loki murmured badly, and quickly disappeared. The situation is not right, retreat quickly. Isn't that just selling Thor? Got used to. Thor finally got up from the ground. Although his face was a little swollen, his expression at least recovered. Ah! Thor rushed over and punched Ron in the body. Clang! This punch seemed to hit an unknown metal, and it was still that kind of extremely strong. Although it is not enough to hold your fist and cry out in pain, the tingling sensation from the fist is still very real. Are you still Asgard? Thor couldn't help asking. Then, he was punched by Ron again. So boring. Invincible is really lonely. Don't blame Ron for being too strong, it can only mean that Thor is too good. The others couldn't help but turn their heads away from watching this scene. Looking any further, Thor is about to collapse. The Valkyries who came from afar shook their heads when they saw this scene. There is no comparison between Thor and Hela. Although Hela is a lunatic, she is really strong. Don't talk about one Thor, 10 Thor probably can't beat her. But Thor is worthy of being a man. He was not knocked down in this situation, and he still stood up tenaciously. He finally remembered where his advantage was. That's the hammer. Thor swung Mjolnir and threw it at Ron. Clang. There was another sound of steel clashing, and then he saw Mjolnir being held in Ron's hand. Ron pushed a little harder. Crack. A crack appeared on Mjolnir. Thor's expression, which was still relaxed, immediately changed. He looked at Ron with seriousness and shock. What do you want to do? Ron thought about it, and threw the hammer back. Boom. Thor was hit directly in the face with his own hammer and fell to the ground. And this time he never got up again. He won't get up when anyone comes. Crush Mjolnir's record and leave it to Hela, the goddess of death. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fun for him to crush Mjolnir now and make a storm axe in advance. At that time, Hela may not be able to stand up to Thor. After all, she hadn't been back to Asgard for a long time. One thing that is special about Hela is that the longer she stays in Asgard, the stronger she becomes. The same goes for Amora, the enchantress. Her magic is the strongest in Asgard, and it will gradually weaken once she leaves. It can be said that Asgard is still very special to the gods. Thor, are you the god of the hammer? A voice of hatred and indisputable sounded. The god King Odin, who hadn't appeared for a long time, came, and he solemnly put on the destroyer armor, holding the eternal spear in his hand. I don't know, I thought I encountered a big enemy invasion. Thor just glanced at Odin out of the corner of his eye, then continued to play dead. The god of the hammer is the god of the hammer, it is better than being beaten. Thor only felt that he was going to be killed by 2 punches and a hammer. The whole body seemed to be falling apart. With this physical quality, he can be sure that he is not from Asgard. How could the Asgardians have a better constitution than their royal blood? The Odinson family ruled Asgard by virtue of their blood and the power of Odin. The blood makes their constitution stronger than the Protoss of common, and the power of Odin makes them unrivaled. Especially constitution. Compared with the Asgardians who like to fight, close combat and fist-to-hand combat are more recognized by them. So the general mage is not welcomed by the people of Asgard. Odin understands this too. He looked at Ron for a long time speechless. Asgard is not without outliers. For example, Karl Nila, and the Amora sisters in front of me, all have outstanding magic abilities. That's why he restricted the spread of magic in Asgard, because it was not conducive to control. But in terms of physical ability, the strongest must be the Odin family. Unexpectedly, now this restriction is broken by Ron. What, is the king of God going to attack his own people? Ron at the moment sneered, signaling to both Sif and Brynhild not to stand up. HMPH, I didn't know the people of Asgard would do anything to their prince. Odin replied not to be outdone. He has found out Ron's identity. Really Asgardians, back then, they also participated in the 9 Realms War together, although it was only for the logistics department. Definitely, there are so many people who have something to do with him. Brynhild, Sif, seemed to be related to him. This gave Odin a headache. The hammer god is too weak. Why should such a weak god be the crown prince? Ron said casually, and got the approval of many Asgard people. Thor has no decent record. Unlike Hela who led the Asgards to conquer the 9 realms. Therefore, people actually don't have a high degree of recognition for him. It's just because of his status as a prince. Odin's face was very ugly, and he seemed to see what Ron had in mind. Thor is very strong, but he is still too young. He needs more experience to gain everyone's recognition. Odin had to say, tell everyone that Thor is still young. Unfortunately, you don't have that kind of patience with some people. Ron said, you don't have to be hypocritical. If I hadn't rescued and sealed that person back then, and extinguished the eternal fire, I don't know how many people would have died in Asgard. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.